Well, turning now to the tech sector, investors have their eye on Apple as it gears up to report earnings on Thursday. Wall Street showing its support for the stock, with 77% of analysts holding a buy rating on the tech giant. With more on this and what to expect from Apple, let's bring in Yahoo Finance's Dan Howley. Dan, a number of things to look out for. Obviously, iPhone sales, services, but also now what that banking business is going to start to look like for the company.
Yeah, that's right. And that'll go right into the services aspect of things. Let's just break down some of the numbers here. For Q2, we're expecting total revenue of $92.6 billion. Now, that would be roughly 5% off of what Apple saw in Q2 2022. They were down a little more than 5% in revenue last quarter as well. And this is something that Apple kind of telegraphed during their prior earnings call, basically saying that they would continue to see the headwinds that they've experienced, whether that's issues with different types of inventory or sales in China and around China, though those should have started to pick up again as those COVID lockdowns ended. Now, as far as segment revenue, this is where we're going to start to see where the problems lie, at least as far as we can tell from the predictions. Now, Mac growth, that's expected to decline or fall 25% from 2022. We're also looking at iPad. That should decline revenue 12%. iPhone revenue would decline around 3%. And then we can look at services, which would actually grow 6.5%. Now, the reason for the Mac, the steep decline in the Mac and the iPad, it's basically the same story we're seeing throughout tech, where PC sales, or in this case, Mac sales and iPad sales, are declining because A, people bought a ton of them during the pandemic and they don't necessarily need new ones right now. And B, well, they're expensive and people don't have the money or aren't willing to go out right this second and start buying these expensive products. It also has to do with the fact that Apple have released newer products in those lines with newer chips around the same time last year. So we're seeing that kind of hangover. Overall, I think from the analysts that I spoke to, they're expecting Apple to do fairly well this quarter, although some that I spoke to said they could miss on revenue slightly just because of iPhone sales. And I think, when you look at the broader picture here, what this has to do with big tech, well, Apple really is the behemoth. Yes, Microsoft is just as nearly as large with its more than $2 trillion market cap, but Apple is still the big dog. And anytime there's any kind of disruption as far as what we see from their results, it's going to impact the rest of big tech. So we'll have to see if the sector's overall performance that we've seen so far, Meta beating, Google beating, Amazon beating, if that can hold up and if we'll continue to see that moving forward and investors will be happy, or if Apple misses and we see the rest of big tech suffer as well.
Yeah, always a big one to watch there. Apple, of course, as you mentioned, Dan, making that entry into banking. They launched that high yield savings account last month. What do we know about the take up so far? What have we heard about the deposits?
Yeah, early on, there were nearly $1 billion in deposits. And just anecdotally, some analysts that I spoke to said that they were just moving some of their money over there on their own. Now, you get a higher rate when you use Apple Daily Money or Apple Daily Cash. When that goes directly into the savings account. If you deposit cash separately, it's still above 4%, but it's not as high as when you use the daily cash. But look, if you have a savings account that's giving you back 4%, I mean, I'm thinking about kicking my bank to the curb because my savings account just gives me nothing. So this is really, I think, something that people are going to continue to look at as an opportunity for Apple to grow in this finance sector. And someone I spoke to had also said, look, it's going from savings to checking at some point, and then Apple may just be your total bank.
Dan, that makes the two of us when we're talking about where the yields are right now, right? I mean, 4%, that's hard to find. And I imagine a lot of people transferring their money over, but something scares me about putting everything on your phone. I don't think I'm the only one thinking that. Dan Howley there is going to be on top of all of the numbers coming out of Apple. Thanks so much for that.